I need to understand what you're doing and why you're making the decisions. And it doesn't have to be an end-all to be-all if we disagree. We can find the one thing or two things that we agree on. Let's focus on that and figure the other stuff out at another time. See, watch me grow. He had my back, silently. This is the first time, and I have to say I'm extremely blessed and very, very, very honored because I completely respect him and really hold him in high regard. And for him to actually say that he's openly supporting me is a major deal for me. It adds value to who I am and my ability to be able to grow, to have a partner like him in government. And that's really what it's about for me. And so anyone that he puts in front of me, anytime he calls me, I know it's something of value, so I would never hesitate to say, let's go, let's do it. I only asked him, and we talk about this all the time, listen, it's easier said than done. A lot of times you hear people say things, but you gotta watch what people do before they get there. You don't need a title to make change. You can do these things before that. You do not need a title to do it. All this title does is it allows me to expand what I'm able to do. Now I can put permanent measures to what it is. Now I can put policies. Now I can introduce laws. Now I can do all of these things. But guess what God had me doing? Building relationships with different people. So I have the support of Congressman Jeffries, Senator Prasad, two different levels of government. I'm dealing with the speaker. I'm actually talking and engaging with people when it comes to things like the district line changing, things that are happening right now, the insecurities that we're experiencing within our community. So now I can appreciate the struggle. I can appreciate why, because not only did God need me to form these partnerships, but he needed them to respect me too. And so that was really important. So that's why this timing is so unique to me, because at the end of the day, last year I ran for city council. I lost by 1,100 votes. I got over almost 7,000 votes within that race. When I put together something called the county committee, I was doing it to help somebody else. But I never stopped being involved in every aspect of the political structure. So I know some of y'all heard of county committees, judicial delegates. You probably don't care about it. You don't know who these people are. You don't even know what these things do. But I'm going to take this back for just a second. When Mr. Barron vacated the seat for the assembly to move to the council, the governor just yesterday actually issued what they call a proclamation to call for a special election. All right? Call for a special election. Once that happens and she issues that proclamation and calls for that special election, the next step is that the Democratic Party actually calls something called a county committee meeting. The county committee, so you can briefly understand, is a governing body for the Democratic Party. Every party probably has county committee. I'm focused on Democrats. But they have a governing body, which is county committee. Because it's different assembly districts, and it's a state seat, this particular county committee in this particular district will convene to do 1, 2, 3 things. They're going to nominate somebody to take the Democratic line. They're going to vote for that person to take the Democratic line. And then they're going to vote on board members for that county committee at that particular time. And county committee is a 2-year term. You do not get paid, but the roles are very important because you're involved in designing the policy, creating resolutions for the party itself. You vote on these things. And so once that happens, in this instance, a county committee makes the decision as to who gets the Democratic line when people vacate those seats. I happen to run county committee as a non-elected, sometimes unheard of. But I actually won my slate, so I control the majority of the votes in county committee. So before we came here, yesterday, the governor announced that this election is going to happen. So we immediately have to get into roll, kick into play. So we have to make sure that the process is going to happen, that we're communicating with the county committee, and that was one of the things that I was excited about, because I didn't just call my county committee because something's happening. You gotta consistently engage with people. These are people that's part of the community. These are people that should be able to access the information that the club is giving out, any information and getting help. So I was engaging with my county. So when we have this meeting that's soon to come up, I will have the Democratic line for this assembly. Now what happens next is other parties that can actually run a candidate. Very possible. They can run a candidate, they can, maybe somebody just wants to run, and they can do their own petitioning and create their own line, but I will have the Democratic line. So that's where we're at in terms of the assembly. Now, I didn't think about the assembly race initially because I was really focused on the city council. Because I felt like, okay, well, you know, I'm really grassroots, I love to be in the community, you know, the city has a huge budget, I feel like a lot of these things are mismanaged. You know, I really just want to do city council. And again, I was really prepping county committee, but I was really doing it for somebody else. The person decided not to run again. We had a conversation with the team, and we decided based on the momentum, based on the need for change still within the community. We're still facing issues where we have elected officials who have never actually authored nor pushed a bill in over 20 years. It's unheard of. We realized I have an organization that I co-founded called East New York Brooklyn Collaborative. We did a couple of trips to DC and to Albany because we wanted to track funding for educational resources and mental wellness. And we were told when we went to Albany that the reason why you're not getting the resources that you could get, additional resources for, is because your electeds are just not favored. So what do we go back to? This is not about badgering anybody. It's about understanding the value of building relationships. It's not about having to agree. It's not about being a puppet. It's not about being the machine. It's not about any of these things. Because I don't care if you're friend or foe, if you're about what's happening in this community, if you're creating legislation that's going to protect and grow and put funding in to this community to grow jobs and businesses, that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. Why? Because those are the key, that's the answer to all the other issues that we're having. Like the problems we're having in the school with the lack of resources. Like us being number one in homelessness. Like the accountability levels. We're not respected as a community. You're not growing jobs. You're not growing skill sets. You see those partnerships that I just talked about just on a business level? Our schools can be doing those partnerships. Every kid is not going to go out there and get in college or want to go to college. So we should leave them for dead. We need to think about things very, very differently. We need to make sure that we're inclusive when we're dealing with the growth of our community, and the focus has to be around building economically. And it has to start, to me, at least from middle school. Because we have to focus on two things: preventing chatting Patty. I know you probably want to have a little bit more questions about legislation and stuff like that if you want, but I'm going to open up for questions because I can sit on here and talk all day. But it's really important. I thank Steve for supporting me, but you need to know who you're supporting and why. And that's really important to me. So, open up for questions. You don't tell me you don't have them, because I didn't do that great of a job. Kenyatta?
Yes, good evening. I wanted to ask about education because I heard that theme come up a lot when you were speaking. And I like how you ended it with education as well, because it seems like it's a nucleus for the community, whether that be your receiving education in the home or within an institution. In terms of advancing with the budgets, with the money, with the proper people that you have in place to teach, what would you suggest the sourcing come from for the teachers, for the funding, and for the representatives of the school?
Listen, the state, and I'm going to talk from a state perspective, but this can go for any level of government, from the federal, to the state, to the city, because that's how it trickles down in that particular one, right? A lot of money is misappropriated. Let's just be clear about that, right? And so that's why it's important for us to educate ourselves on money and budget, right? Understanding how to track. Now, remember I spoke about tracking funding for educational resources, right? And that doesn't mean just books, right? And pencils and stuff. That really is about the staffing, the teachers being able to get quality educators, being able to invest in professional development, making sure that we're making and creating a space where we can hire locally, right? With people that connect with our children and connect with them culturally, right? So these are things that we have to invest in. There's a lot of misappropriation, so it's really about making sure that you're identifying leadership that understands the budget. I don't know if y'all realize this, some people don't look at some line items of things that they sign off on. They don't understand the budget at all. They don't understand how we can access different line items and budget items. Funding, different levels of funding. A lot of people just hear discretionary all day. That's not the only level of funding that we have. So when we talked about, and I looked at the agenda that we had, it can begin with that $175 million that they owe from a piece of legislation that they never made good. So it's about making sure that they're accountable for getting the resources that we need, and making sure that we're understanding the budgets, understanding where we can identify funding from. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm an extreme leftist, but I am somewhat of a leftist, right? And so I'm looking at a number of different things when it comes to people not paying their fair share as well, right? Nobody's talking about the money from the lottery. People can talk about it, but nobody cares. Ever receive it? Nobody's talking about the developers that don't pay their taxes and giving tax incentives, and we're not getting anything back in return. They're not talking about that. They're not talking about the corporations like Amazon and all these different places that are really extracting from our community but not paying their fair share. And I know that at times we feel like I'm so disenchanted. Everything I say, it doesn't matter that I vote, we're not getting anywhere. That sets us back. It sets us back. It's not just about voting, it's about organizing and educating. And putting together groups like this where we're doing something. It's not just about marching.